Hi everybody, this is Nate Millan, the head football coach of the two-time defending Centennial Conference champions. This is my 6th year at Muhlenberg, and I love every moment. Dig in.
That's more like it. Jason Mclean, head coach of Muhlenberg Wrestling, dual meet champions last year, ranked top 20 in the country, roll mules, whatever it takes. It's weird. Oh!
Hi, I'm Jason Toder, head men's and women's tennis coach at Muhlenberg College.
I'm Todd Gross. I'm going into my 9th season as the head baseball coach.
Sarah Leavenworth, head softball coach.
Jake Plunkett, head men's lacrosse coach.
Coach Kristen Stuckel, Muhlenberg women's lacrosse.
Hi, I'm Megan Edinger, head field hockey coach here at Muhlenberg College.
Good morning, Mule Nation. Billy Hallman here, head men's and ladies golf coach at Muhlenberg College.
Hi, I'm Brad Hackett, the track and field coach at Muhlenberg College. Kids, don't try this one at home.
Sean Topping, head men's soccer coach, Muhlenberg College.
I'm Dave Weitzman, head women's soccer coach.
Amanda Krampf, head women's volleyball coach at Muhlenberg College.
Hi, I'm Ron Roan, head coach of women's basketball at Muhlenberg College.
My name is Kevin Hopkins. I'm the head men's basketball coach here at Muhlenberg College, going into my 4th year.
Tonight's host, Jack McCallum, 71 graduate. Jack was a senior writer for Sports Illustrated for nearly 30 years and is an award-winning journalist, novelist, and podcast host. One of his most notable works is his 2012 book titled Dream Team: How Michael, Magic, Larry, Charles, and the greatest team of all time conquered the world and changed the game of basketball forever. Please join me in welcoming Jack back on the screen to have a conversation with our dream team of coaches.
Lynn,
Jack?
Don't leave yet. Don't turn
Okay.
off the video. I have a question before we move on. I don't know how many people know, but we are listening to the all-time men's and women's scorer from DeSales University. So my question is, don't tell me you don't know the answer. How many points did you leave DeSales with? Come on, you know.
I do know. I'm embarrassed to say I do know. 2,193.
Okay, that's a good number of points. Thanks, Lynn. So we're going to begin tonight with the cavalcade of coaches here with Sarah Leavenworth, if Sarah wants to come on. Sarah's in her 2nd season at Muhlenberg. The Mules were off to a 6-2 start before her 1st season was cut short. Sarah, can we see you?
I'm trying.
All right. I'll ask you anyway, but we should see you. But anyway, before you come on, you played at 3 different colleges and you went to the College World Series with one of them. That must have been quite an experience going to the College World Series. What do you remember about it?
Well, it was a blur, you know, being 18 and being thrown in a bus and driven from Mississippi to Oklahoma was a lot. But I mean, just getting there and playing in the Hall of Fame Stadium, it was unbelievable. And seeing, you know, players that I had read about. I mean, this was the 90s, so I didn't get to watch them on ESPN. But people that I'd read about and seen play growing up was unbelievable. It's something that you don't forget. Oh, here we go. There we are. Sorry.
There you are. How you doing, Sarah?
Hi. But yeah, the whole experience was crazy. Just going from regional to that in a quick time frame. The change of weather and in playing in a massive stadium like that was amazing. And then just getting up there and getting my first at bats in something like that was.
What'd you do? Did you get a hit?
No, I grounded out to shortstop twice.
Okay. Final question. You were a catcher, and I wondered, a game like softball where there's so many, pitches are strikes. There's so many. The catcher really handles the ball so often in this sport. Do do catchers make the best coaches in this sport? You know, the game's all in front of you. Would you say that?
I would, and I'm partial, but I think so. I think one of the biggest things, even like you mentioned, is seeing the field and seeing everything in front of you, being the field manager. And especially in softball, it's all about controlling the pitching. From in my position, being able to recruit the pitching and then bringing them in and developing them, and then getting them to produce in games. All of that you learn. I spent 20 years sitting on buckets, catching lessons, learning from some of the best pitching coaches and catching some of the best pitchers at that World Series. You know, one of the best pitchers to ever throw was on my team. And so I had the opportunity to work with them. And in softball, that's the name of the game is pitching. So that's the biggest thing. But then, you know, everything from being able to turn around and, you know, get the umpire to move in your direction a little bit to get a couple of strikes, you know, keeping people under control when, you know, things start to unwind. That's all stuff that applies very directly to catching.
Yeah. Thanks, Sarah. I'm glad we finally saw you.
Yeah, thanks.
Next up is Todd Gross. Todd's in his ninth season at Muhlenberg. He's led the Mules to the Centennial Conference playoffs each of the last 2 years. Todd, I wondered, baseball really seems to have undergone a fundamental change at the majors. It's home runs, it's analytics, and it shifts. And I just wondered, defensive shifts I'm talking about, does that filter down to small college baseball?
I think in a little way. I think at the highest level in pro ball, they have so many charts, so many advanced scouting, so many ways to get so many at bats on every single player that they can have all these crazy shifts. You saw in the World Series, the Rays even went to a 4-man outfield a couple times. I think for us, we do have scouting reports and we do have the ability to have at bats from players that we're going to face, but not at the level that I feel like we need to have wholesale shifts. We may shade some players a little bit to the right or a little bit to the left or in the gap or down the line. But as far as wholesale changes, I don't think it's trickled down as much to our level of small college baseball.
Do kids come in wanting to hit, much like basketball has become 3-point shots? Do kids come into college now wanting to hit home runs more, since that's become a big thing?
Yes, you hear about it a lot. Launch angle and exit velocity and all of that. I think is a big part of the game right now. For us, it's not. We're a pitching and defense team, but a lot of kids, I think, just from watching Sunday Night Baseball and seeing all the big interest in launch angle and exit velocity and all of that, I think is a big draw for guys.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, Todd.
No problem.
Good
Thank
luck
you.
whenever you get back.
Thank you.
Next is Jason Toder, who is the coach of men's and women's tennis, who appears to be making a getaway in his car. Jason's in his third year as head coach of both programs, and he coached the men to their first win against Lafayette since 1948, which I remember because that's the year I was born, as a matter of fact. You are in the Moravian Hall of Fame as a tennis player, Jason. I wondered, where were you in your Moravian college career when you realized you should have gone to Muhlenberg?
Well, first of all, let me say what an honor it is to be speaking with you, Jack. It's really cool. I've read a lot of what you've done, and I'm really glad that you were able to do this for us. Secondly, I actually teach on the side, so I had to actually run out at 7 o'clock from teaching some youth lessons, so that's why I'm in the car at the moment. As far as why I didn't end up at Muhlenberg, my mom was actually a professor at Moravian, so I ended up getting to go there for free, or I probably would have maybe ended up at Muhlenberg. No, I don't know if that's the case, but at the time, we always had great matches when we played against Muhlenberg, and it was always a tough opponent. I really enjoyed the rivalry. And I think that as coaches, yeah, we want to win every match and we want to beat everybody. But 4 of the 6 guys that I played with in college are also college tennis coaches. So one of the things that that we try and do is try and spread the game to as many people as possible. We try and heighten the level of competition, and all of our teams are always trying to get better. And I just enjoy the fact that I get to be part of the Moravian-Muhlenberg rivalry, even though Moravian will never beat Muhlenberg again.
So finally, since you're in the Moravian Hall of Fame, I would guess you probably had pretty good success against Muhlenberg as a player.
Yes, I never lost to Muhlenberg. That's a fact.
What a final comment to send you off, but thanks a lot, Jason.
Thank you, Jack. I appreciate it.
Next is Billy Hallman, is the golf coach. He is in his first season as head coach of both programs. He was an assistant with the men last year. And Billy, I want to ask you about the Navy. You are probably the only one on this call, I can't say that for sure, who has been in a submarine. So can you tell us about your Navy experience?
Yeah, a lot of people say that to me. How did you deal with being on a submarine? To me, it was just like living in my house. Once you go down inside of it, it's just like you go to the kitchen, you go to your bedroom, you kind of get used to it, and then you forget about it once you go underwater. There's no windows down there, so you can't see where you are. You just do your job, watch a lot of movies, eat a lot, and sleep. It just becomes really repetitive.
Do they test, this is a ridiculous question, but do they test people for claustrophobia? Did anybody ever freak out when you were down there, or they know that you're not going to be the type of person to do that?
They don't test you. You have to volunteer for it. In my 10 years, one person had a panic attack, we'll call it. We had to make an emergency surface to get him off the submarine. But most people, they volunteer for it, so they're ready for it.
That was me, by the way, that made the I don't even like the MRI machine, but if in case anybody wants to follow up with Billy also on an email or anything, he started out as a basketball coach. We don't have quite enough time to get there, but thanks a lot, Billy, and thank you for your service.
Thank you, Jack.
Next is Kristen Stuckel, who is the women's lacrosse coach, the winningest coach in Muhlenberg women's lacrosse history, with 157 wins in 20 years. Kristen, I wanted to ask you, the research I done, which took me 30 seconds, the growth in the women's lacrosse game is incredible. It is something like 97% rise in college women's lacrosse since 2003. So that must be a concomitant growth in high schools. When you go to recruit now, are players so much more sophisticated and everything about the game? And also, how could you account for that kind of growth?
It's exciting. It's a fun sport. So many athletes are getting into it. It's quick, it's fast. It's just a lot of fun, a lot of scoring. So high intensity. The game can change within a matter of seconds or minutes, who's winning or losing. So I think it definitely draws a lot of athletes to that game. You see a lot of athletes also maybe jump in from different sports or trying to, do multiple sports and coming into lacrosse or finding it a little bit later, but loving it. So it's really fun and great for recruiting. I think the club scenes definitely come on very strong. So you do see a lot of athletes playing at the club level and getting very, very good. And yes, their skill set is pretty sharp when they are looking at the college scene. So it's pretty exciting to be involved with that and work with those student athletes.
So is it harder or easier now to recruit at a small college program because there's so many more players? Is that just more for, I don't know who a power is in, Johns Hopkins or Syracuse, but is it harder or is it better now considering the growth in the game?
Well, there's also a lot of growth in programs. So like you said, a lot of universities have picked up the sport of lacrosse, so you have more schools, I think, to compete with to, especially the Division III level. I mean, we have a lot of programs, a lot of teams, so it's definitely competitive, but it is definitely helpful that a lot of kids love the sport and are playing it. And we love to get out there and watch them and hopefully show them our wonderful community at Muhlenberg and why it's so great and how it can be such a terrific learning experience to be part of Muhlenberg and the women's lacrosse program.
Thanks a lot, Kristen, and thanks for all your years at Muhlenberg. Next,
it's been fun. Thank you so much.
Okay, Jake Plunkett, who is the men's lacrosse coach. He's in his 6th year at Muhlenberg. The Mules are 26 and 13 the last 3 years. Set a school record for wins with 11 in 2018. All our coaches played probably at some level. Probably, I'm saying this quickly, Jake may have played at the highest level since he was a really good player at Syracuse, where you won the national title. Being as modest as you can, Jake, what was that like, winning a national championship, and you got a White House visit out of it, I believe, right?
Yeah, I mean, it was a lot of fun. I mean, I grew up as an ice hockey player. So, in upstate New York, you play 3 sports, and you never really think that you're ever going to be at the highest stage like that. But, playing in, I think, M&T Bank Stadium in Baltimore in front of 53,000 people, it was a surreal experience. And, obviously meeting the president is something that I'll remember for the rest of my life. And it was
What year was that? What year was that, Jake?
That one was in 2004.
So we
were fortunate enough to win it in 2002, which was in Rutgers, and then 2004, which is in Baltimore. So it was definitely a great experience for all the Syracuse boys.
Real quickly, what's the difference between D3 lacrosse and D1 lacrosse? With basketball, it's pretty quickly you could say the physicality of the players, the size. Is that primarily what it is in lacrosse? I mean, I'm sure there's a level of sophistication if you play D1 lacrosse. You got to be good in everything. But what would be the major difference, would you say?
Yeah, size, speed, strength. I think those are the physical things. And then I think in Division III, you have a little bit more of a life than you do in D1. Like D1, I was going back to school 3 weeks earlier than everybody with double sessions, and we're staying until May 25th till Memorial Day weekend, playing late in the season. Division III, we're only permitted a certain number of practices in your non-traditional season, and then obviously you have your traditional season as well. But you're able to go abroad, enjoy your experience a little bit more, and those are the types of things that I think our Division III athletes really enjoy at Muhlenberg.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks a lot, Jake. Continued success.
Thank you.
Next is Kevin Hopkins, the men's basketball coach. Kevin's in his 4th season at Muhlenberg. Really turned a corner last year, had 19 wins, their most, I think, in 18 years, made it to the Centennial Conference playoffs. I wondered, Kevin, we talk a lot about NESCAC basketball since my son's a professor at Middlebury, which you don't really acknowledge, being an Amherst guy. What is when I watch NESCAC basketball and then I watch the Centennial basketball, the guards are really talented. There's very little, there's so many good small guards who know how to play. What is the difference level between NESCAC, where you played, and Centennial? Is it the fact they get 6'10" players like yourself there? But what would be the major difference, would you say?
Yeah, I think the biggest difference that I've found is the size of the post players. But overall, it's been really impressive to see the Centennials rise. When I was playing and coaching at Amherst, there was multiple top 25 teams, multiple teams making the NCAA tournament each year. And so in the Centennial, to see what Swarthmore and Johns Hopkins have been able to do. And then obviously there's the history with Franklin and Marshall, and hopefully we can join those teams. I think the competitiveness of the Centennial is kind of catching up to the NESCAC a little bit, but really excited to see where it goes the next couple of years.
It was interesting. Finally, when I was in school 100 years ago, Swarthmore that's where you went to get a win, man. You went to you play, and Johns Hopkins also. How do you account for what they did? Swarthmore took and I know Hopkins, I think, beat them last year, but to take Swarthmore became one of the best D3 programs in the country. Again, is it the big players, or did they make a commitment to just get a more 9 kids that can play in the rotation, or what's the big difference?
Well, I think both those schools have really great head coaches. Landry Kosmalski at Swarthmore and then Josh Luffler at Johns Hopkins have both done a really good job recruiting talented guys. And they're great X's and O coaches, great schematically. I think you're starting to see a lot of kids valuing education. So you're starting to see kids going to these high academic Division III schools instead of taking low-level Division I scholarships to lesser academic institutions. And I think there's really been a shift in kind of having a long-term view of, having a chance to play for a national championship at the Division III level at those schools, with also getting a great education once basketball is done, and you got to go out into the job market.
Okay, thanks a lot, Kevin. Continued success. I hope you guys get back out there. Next is our Muhlenberg wrestling coach, Jason Mclean. He is a former All-American when he was at Muhlenberg. I think he was Muhlenberg's first wrestling All-American and led the Mules to a school record 18 wins in each of the last 2 years. I got to ask you a quick pandemic question. You guys were in Iowa, right, for the Nationals when you got the word. Just briefly, how did that happen and how monumentally disappointed was that when you got the word?
So we got the word before our last workout. We tried to stick to our regular schedule while we were there. And the guys were actually coming to me. I was at a coaches meeting and everything went okay. And then they made the announcement and the guys had just walked in. So, we kind of rolled our sleeves up and kept going. We practiced and we wrestled some live matches and hugged and cried. And I thanked them for everything they had done for us. And then we went out and ate a big steak dinner. So
how many wrestlers did you have there, Jason?
3.
3 wrestlers, yeah.
Yeah.
And your background is interesting. You were kind of dragged kicking and screaming back into coaching, even though you've been very successful. Very quickly, you had a whole other life before you decided to get into coaching. What were you doing at the time before you got back? I think at New Brunswick, but what was going to be your career?
I was working as a not a pharmacy rep, but for pharmacy companies, teaching them software and hardware for rollouts, national rollouts. And it was a great job. Traveled a lot, money was great, but it wasn't fulfilling as I was looking for. And long story short, I got a call from a Muhlenberg parent that was a principal at New Brunswick High School, who asked me to help out briefly, quote unquote. And briefly is now 15 years later.
You just wanted to get into the big money instead of farm repping, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, everybody at Muhlenberg is glad you made that career change, and thanks and continued success to you there.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Next is Roan, the women's basketball coach, who is nothing less than the winningest coach in Muhlenberg athletic history with 374 wins, 8 Centennial League conferences championships in 19 years. Ron and I go way back. And in doing my research, Ron, I uncovered something. A 1981 story in the Fordham newspaper written by Roan. So it was your first, I couldn't read it, by the way. I wasn't able to pull it up and read it so I could critique it. Did you want to become a journalist before you were a coach?
Yeah, actually, that was my major at Fordham University. I was a communications media comm major. Some of my classmates at Fordham were Michael Kay, who does Yankee games now, Mike Breen, who does the NBA, Charlie Slows, who does the Nationals. We're all classmates and contemporaries of mine. And about a year or two in, I was working, with a women's basketball team as well, because I had some friends on the team. And somewhere along the line, I decided I wanted to answer the questions instead of asking them. Don't know if it was the right career move or not. Sometimes
it probably was. Real quick, you were a baseball player, I think, at Easton High, and weren't really a hoopster. Maybe you don't want to tell your team that, but how did you make that switch? And apparently, it doesn't matter. You can become a successful coach if you did not play that sport at a high level.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the history of basketball, some of the all-time, I'm not putting myself in that class, but a Louis Carnesecca, Rick Majerus, Some of those people, Franks, who coached the Nets, started out as a manager at Indiana. I played basketball, but not at the varsity level in high school. I played baseball. My 1978 baseball team is now in the Easton High School Hall of Fame. So I'm by associating with talented people, I got in the Hall of Fame. And I went to Fordham. A friend of mine who was knew some girls who were going to be on the team. I met them the first day there by accident. Before you know it, I was a manager. I didn't know at that time, 1978 in women's basketball, being a manager meant you were the first assistant because there was no money in women's basketball. And when I graduated, I said, that's what I want to do. So I had the choice coming out of college. I had two people who wanted to hire me as a part-time assistant. Pat Fisher at Lafayette, who was actually a teacher of mine in high school, and a little-known coach who was just getting started at Lehigh by the name of Muffet McGraw. And I chose to go work for Pat, another obviously great career move for me as far as making the big money. Could have followed Muffet, maybe to Notre Dame, made a little more cash. But I've gotten to meet a lot of people along the way. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Like anything you do, the people you meet and who you learn from is more important than maybe what you've done yourself.
Well, generations of women's basketball players are glad you made that switch, Ron. Thanks, and I'll see you down the road.
Thank you.
Sean Topping is next, the men's soccer coach. He's in his 18th year at his alma mater. He's been part of 6 Centennial Conference championships, 3 as a player, 3 as a coach. And I think you were on Muhlenberg's last Final Four team. Can you tell us about that experience, Sean? I mean, but you know.
Yeah. Thanks, Jack.
Question is so exciting in a Final Four, but but what was it like, and where were you? What was the details?
Yeah, so Final Four was interesting with the football team going to the Final Four this past year. How it brought back a flood of memories of the times we were going through it, and the excitement on campus, the energy on campus. For us, it was kind of like, stay in your lane and focus on the next game. I actually was hurt in the regional finals against Messiah that we won in double or triple overtime, I think. So I didn't get to play in the Final Four game myself, but I played all year. So that was obviously disappointing personally, not to be able to actually play in the game, but the whole experience, the whole ride. I was very fortunate my 4 years here to play on 4 very good teams, NCAA all 4 years, and certainly the Final Four sophomore year was icing on the cake at that time. But just the energy, the camaraderie. We just had a great conversation with Mike Falk and a couple of my teammates this past week because it was the 25th anniversary of the Ithaca game that we played here at home. And to us, it seemed like there was 10,000 people. And just being so excited that we were going to a Final Four.
Yeah.
And then, going up to Williamstown, Massachusetts in a blizzard, played really well. We're pretty unlucky not to win it. I think we were the best team that year, but just didn't get the job done.
To have that college experience when you really have a good experience and you're on a winning team, that really is a motivator to stay at a place. I mean, you've been one of the guys that have stayed around. I'm not saying you wouldn't have become a coach here had you not had that experience, but it certainly has to help, right? When you look back at a continuum of success at Muhlenberg.
Yeah, it's certainly a motivator. It sits over my shoulder here, the plaque. So I turn around and I see it. It motivates me want to get the team back there and make a run again and feel the excitement for our guys the way I felt as a student athlete here. So certainly it's been a fun ride so far. We have a lot of work to do to get there, but we're looking forward to getting back on the field and doing it.
Good. Thanks, Sean.
Jack, I have one quick note for you. I don't know if you remember, but you came in and spoke to me in my freshman year. I was in a history of sport class, my freshman seminar with Jeff Tipping, You know, I took the coaches class thinking I was going to get an easy A, and it was my worst grade of the semester. So, but I always remember you coming and speaking to our class.
Jeff Tipping was a great guy. I covered his professional team around here. And when you got the job, I kept going, I thought Jeff left and went back. Now we got Tipping and Topping. Is there something about the Muhlenberg hiring program at the soccer team? But Jeff was, you learned from a good guy, and obviously you learn well. So thanks a lot.
Jeff always said I was one vowel away from greatness.
Okay. Thanks a lot.
Have a good night.
Next is Amanda Krampf, who is the volleyball coach. She is in her third year at Muhlenberg, has a .585 career winning percentage, second in program history. Amanda, I'm interested in when a coach faces a turnaround situation. You were I'm looking down at my paper here since I don't know it by heart, but you were at Kenyon College. You took over a team that was 4-23. 13. I understand this is a complicated answer probably, but what's the first thing you do when you got to turn something around? Do you we got to get better players, we got to get a different attitude? What do you do to change a losing culture?
Yeah, I think the first thing that I did was just getting to know the current players and the current culture, and picking their brains a little bit about where they thought the program was and what they could do differently, right, to become a winning program. And then the second piece is, getting them to buy into me, my coaching style, and also recruiting players that are going to push them a little bit more, compete a little bit better in the conference that we were in, and kind of three different phases, I would say, to trying to turn that program around.
Yeah, you can't chase players off like you can at D1. You got to go to war with the same people that only won. Well, you have some freshmen coming in, but you got to go to war with the same people that won 4 games the previous year, right?
Yeah, I think you really have to get those current players to buy into you and what you're doing, and that the program can be successful, because without them buying in, you can't recruit new players, because it becomes a toxic culture. So I think really getting them to buy in and help you bring in those great players, and I think that just helps kind of fuel the process.
Very quickly, since we're better off playing sports outside, and beach volleyball is in fact an NCAA sport, could you suddenly throw beach sand outside of Muhlenberg's arena and play beach volleyball? It's a ridiculous question, but is there any thought to going to outside volleyball?
We haven't talked about it as a conference. The game is definitely a little bit different. I think sometimes you see players that are better at indoor, throwing them outdoor in the sand kind of changes the dynamic. But, if that gets these kids on the court and playing volleyball, I think it's a great, potential solution to not being able to play at all.
Yeah, I guess it is. All right. Well, thanks, Amanda. Good luck to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Dave Weitzman is the women's soccer coach. He's in his first year as soccer coach. He's currently healing his back from doing that bicycle kick in the video. And he was an assistant last year when the Mules advanced to the ECAC semifinals. Dave, you grew up at, I think, 22nd and Liberty, which is practically on the football field. Muhlenberg's not the place where they charge a lot of money anyway, but you must have some stories about coming over to Memorial Hall and peeking through the bushes and everything. Can you talk a little bit about being a local kid?
Absolutely. Thanks, Jack. So I don't think it was just peeking around the bushes. I was the little kid that would sneak into Memorial Hall and shoot baskets and get kicked out by the equipment manager, Willie, on many occasions, and getting kicked off the football field by Sam Beitelman and some of the other coaches. Although Jeff Tipping never kicked me off the soccer field, but I spent a lot of days around the Muhlenberg College campus with my father playing baseball, because as you probably remember, the baseball field was right there on campus back in the years I was growing up. So I have a lot of fond memories. Muhlenberg College has always had a very special place in my heart. And you might even remember, Jack, the bowling alley that was in Seegers Union. I remember going and bowling down there in the 1 or 2 lanes that they had. And I was also the little guy that was serving the popcorn up and down the stairwell of the Memorial Hall when they would bring the circus into town every year. So I have a lot of great memories, and it's such an honor to be back and coaching and being involved with this dream team of coaches that we have.
I spent my first semester bowling, playing pool, and playing ping pong in a student union, which accounted for my cum, by the way. But real quickly, it took you this long to get back, though, right? I mean, is this kind of a dream, or did just other things kind of get in the way? You played at Pitt, you played at a higher level, I guess, and that took you in a different direction.
Yeah, well, my first job out of the University of Pittsburgh was back here in Lehigh Valley as the sports director for the Allentown Jewish Community Center. And I was always friendly with Jeff Tipping, and I used to go up and watch his practices. And eventually he asked me if I'd like to join his staff. And I jumped aboard as a volunteer assistant coach back in the spring of '96. And, Sean Topping's senior year, fall of '97, I was a part of that coaching staff, and that was such a great team. So I was very fortunate, and I just knew right then and there, being around Jeff Tipping and being around the game again, that this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. And, things come around full circle, and I was very, very fortunate that this past April, Lynn Tubman asked me if I would be interested in taking over the reins of the women's soccer program. And it's been absolutely the perfect place for me. And I'm just still walking on cloud nine. And I pinch myself every day saying that I'm the women's soccer coach at Muhlenberg College.
Well, that's great, Dave. We're glad you came back home. So thanks a lot and good luck. Megan Ettinger is the field hockey coach. She is the winningest coach in Muhlenberg field hockey history with 151 wins in 16 seasons. 2001 graduate of Gettysburg, where you were a captain, 4-year starter on I think you were a very good team. You won the conference championship. So a little bit like I asked before, do you have memories of playing Muhlenberg? And is there anything you could say beside we destroyed Muhlenberg in the 4 years you played for Gettysburg?
I do have really fond memories of playing Muhlenberg. I actually grew up only a half hour south of here. So coming to Muhlenberg to play when I was a student athlete at Gettysburg, it was really fun for my family to just come up to a pretty close game to see me play. We were very successful against Muhlenberg when I was at Gettysburg until my senior year when Coach Kristen Stuckel took over the program, which we unfortunately did not win against Muhlenberg that year. But for me as a player and a coach in the Centennial Conference for over 20 years, it's been really awesome to watch the conference grow. Gettysburg and Hopkins were definitely two of the top dogs when I was in school. But it's been fun to kind of watch the conference grow and to see some of the other teams in the conference rise to the top, Muhlenberg especially. So it's been really fun and exciting. And, as we're going out and we're recruiting, I feel confident in saying that the Centennial is the strongest conference, if not the strongest conference in Division III field hockey. Our last year we had Johns Hopkins and F&M who were duking it out in the Final Four. So it's a fun place to be. It's a fun place to recruit, and it's always really competitive.
Wow, that's great. I did not realize the Centennial was viewed as that kind of, and this is the strength of, is this the strength of field hockey regionally?
It is.
North
Yeah.
more than the West, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. We're in a real great hotbed for hockey right here in Allentown. And, it's a tri-state sport. It's definitely grown a little bit more south and a little bit further west, but it's mainly an East Coast sport for sure.
Wow, that's great. All right. Well, continued success, Megan, and thank you.
Thank you.
Next is Brad Hackett, who is the cross country and track and field coach, Muhlenberg's longest tenured coach, currently in his 22nd year. And the Mules have sent representatives to the national meet in 18 of his last 21 seasons. How you doing, Brad? I won't pretend that I didn't dig this nugget up. Mike Falk did. And he dug up the nugget that your father or your grandfather, so you're going to straighten out the story, played baseball at UConn against George H.W. Bush. And it's kind of a interesting story. Could you tell us about that?
Yeah, my dad played basketball and baseball at UConn in the 40s. And when we were kids, he always talked about playing on the same team with a guy named Walt Dropo, who ended up being the Rookie of the Year in 1950 for the Red Sox. And my dad passed away when I was in college, so he never knew this. But years later, when I was coaching at Syracuse, I was watching a baseball game one night on TV with the Rangers against the Red Sox. It was Nomar Garciaparra's rookie year, and H.W. Bush owned the Rangers at the time. And President Bush had just left the White House. Clinton was president, and he was in the press box. And Chris Berman and he were talking about great Red Sox rookies with Nomar, Ted Williams, Yastrzemski, Jim Rice, etc. And President Bush said, "You're forgetting somebody." And Chris Berman said, "You know who?" And he said, "Walt Dropo." And Chris Berman said, "Mr. President, how do you know who Walt Dropo is?" And President Bush said, "Well, I went to Yale and he went to UConn." And he said, "We played against each other all the time in college." And so all of a sudden I was like, oh my God, Dad must have played baseball against George Bush when they were in college. And I called the sports information director at Yale. I called the sports information director at UConn. Neither one of them could find any record of it. And just a few years ago, we were moving my mom into a senior living facility, and we were cleaning out our childhood home. And I came across a folder that my dad had of all his college sports stuff. And lo and behold, we found a scorecard from 1946, a Yale-UConn baseball game where Walt Dropo, my father, and George Bush were all in the same game. And incredibly enough, we ended up finding out afterwards that it was President Bush's first college game. He went 3 for 4 and he had the game-winning hit. And when the pandemic started, I called the George Bush Presidential Library, and they didn't want it, the scorecard. And I called Cooperstown, and they wanted it. So we sent the scorecard. My brother, sister, and I donated that scorecard to the Baseball Hall of Fame, and they now have it.
That's amazing. You go 3 for 4. How can you decline? Anybody goes 3 for 4, but it's better off in Cooperstown. It's probably cool. You can go visit it then. Take your grandkids and stuff to see it, I guess, right?
Yeah, one would hope so.
Yeah, that's great, Brad. That's a great story. Again, Brad has in his 22nd year and has done an amazing job. I can't imagine the organizational ordeal of having a men's and women's track team out there all the time. If we had more time, I would ask you about how you organize that, but shoot Brad an email. So thanks a lot, Brad. Appreciate all your time here.
Thank you.
And finally is Nate Millan, who is the football coach and who has a recruit coming in at 8 o'clock. So he's probably, I don't know what time it is since the screen is, I have a full screen up here, but Nate's in his 3rd year at Muhlenberg. He won the Centennial Conference Championship each of his first 2 years. His career record is 24-3. Last year, all he did was take a team and put them in a national championship game. So his record speaks for itself. What I want to ask you, Nate, was about your background is offensive. I don't mean you're an offensive guy, but you're an offensive coach. That was your background. You were always an offensive coordinator. You had a season with the Montreal Alouettes. I think you handled tight ends there. When a coach takes over a program, he's usually either comes from an offensive or defensive background. I wondered, does that team then take your personality, or do you have to right away find a really good defensive guy, or how was it when you got the head job here?
Sure, I think that's natural. I think when you're rebuilding a program, you would make that in your own model. But for us, I was taking over for a legend in Coach Donnelly, and the program was built on being terrific defensively, as Coach Donnelly was the defensive coordinator. And we've just kept that model for us right now. We try our best players on defense. And I was really fortunate to find a great defensive coordinator and Corey David. Corey and I worked for many years together at SUNY Cortland. We lived together. I was in his wedding. And so to have somebody like that I trust, it really makes my life a lot easier as a new young head football coach. I think maybe as the years go on, the team will progress towards being maybe a little bit more offensive. But currently right now, I think at 24-3 and making the Final Four, I think we'll stick with the recipe of being a defensive team.
Yeah, don't go changing changing the menu. It's so specialized in the pros. I mean, I covered a lot of, I don't think people understand how much the offensive side is divorced from the defensive side. I assume it's not quite like that at the D3 level, that you got your eyes on everything, or is the job just too big that you have to really specialize?
Right now, we have to. Again, I don't, as with all extensive of 2 years of being the head football coach, with my extensive knowledge, I can't do everything. And so we meet after practice until 11 or 12 o'clock at night, and I never see Coach David and the defensive staff. And there are nights where we walk by the meeting room and they're still there, and there are nights where we leave and they've gone home for the day. And so he runs his side of the deal and I run my side of the deal. And maybe when I'm 50 or 60 and there's a new young puppy defensive coordinator who's ready to take over, maybe I'll dabble in that side of the ball a little bit more. But right now, when you have the trust in somebody like I do with Corey, it just makes things that much better for our program.
Yeah. Well, thanks a lot, Nate. You certainly gave a lot of thrills to the Muhlenberg community last year, and continued success. And
appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Okay. See you, Nate. I think that's a pretty good wrap up of our coaches. I believe that we may have a couple questions that are coming in. If anybody, do we have them? I'm looking here. Lynn?
Yep, Jack, I think coaches, if you want to jump back on to the screen, we can all jump on and field some of these questions. And we have a couple in, but we had one that came in earlier, Jack, that was directed to Ron, and maybe all our coaches, I think, would be a good one to start. Do you have that, Jack?
I'm trying to see. Oh, okay. It's up on Q&A rather than chat. But anyway, somebody's asking me, who cares what my favorite sport, but because of the, let me get up here. Here's the questions that I have. Because of the pandemic, but I guess these are more for Lynn. Because of the pandemic, what can supporters and fans do to help the athletic programs? Lynn?
Sure, I'll take that, and then coaches can jump in. I mean, it's been challenging, and I'm sure every coach would have a different response to that question. There's a lot you can do. Reach out to the individual coaches, ask how we can be supporting our student athletes first and foremost in these challenging times. This program this evening is a perfect example of some of the things we're trying to do to stay engaged with our fans and our supporters, to learn more about our coaches and our staff. And then, as always, there are fundraising initiatives and events that we are holding to help each of our programs. Mule Madness in February is coming up. We've had a success every year after year. We've increased our fundraising efforts for all our teams. So keep an eye out for more information regarding Mule Madness. But I think tonight's program, hands down, was a first for us. I think it's been amazing. I can't wait to do something like this again. I've learned a lot, and I can open the floor to the other coaches to give a quick response on how our fans can support us.
Any ideas?
I'll jump in. I know for men's basketball, we've started to work with our alumni and developed a mentorship program for our student athletes. So we've talked to each of our guys and figured out what industries they're interested in. And I know they're always eager to have conversations and learn from alums. So even if it's not money that you're donating, we would obviously appreciate your time and whatever type of support you can offer. I think the coaches on this call are all pretty creative. So in whatever way you want to reach out and help support programs, I think coaches would be willing to work with you. Just reach out and we'll be happy to have the conversation.
Anyone else want to add to that? I guess somebody could jump in. Somebody asked, and it sounds like more of a question for Lynn, but I'd like a couple coaches to answer. And the question is, in what ways can our athletes, coaches, college take our sport to the next level competitively? And that seems to be do you want to as coaches? I mean, everybody's always talking about the next level. I don't know what that is. To most coaches, does that mean dominating in your conference or trying to get to a national championship? Does anybody want to answer that question? Because that interests me myself. Anyone?
I'll jump in. I think it's different for every sport. For wrestling, individually, we have, you can chase a national title, and we have a lot of young men that want to do that. And as a team, we want to win the conference title, but even more than that, we want to win the regional title. We want to finish top 10 in the country every year, academically and athletically. So I mean, as far as our program goes, and I think a lot of the programs on there, you want national recognition. These athletes put a lot into their sports all across the board, and they deserve the most. They absolutely deserve to be at the top of the pile. And football is a great example for that. So staying competitive within our own department, I'm personally always chasing them, trying to be the next one to play in a national title, to wrestle for a national title, or play for that kind of big trophy. So for us, it's getting them to the big stage.
Yeah. Anybody else? Somebody else that want to jump in on that?
Jack, for women's basketball, obviously we've had our share of success in the conference, but it's a new team every year. It's a different group of people. So you have a group, people tend to look at your team and program as a constant, but not everybody on my team's been to a Sweet 16. They haven't won a conference championship perhaps since they've been there. So doing it again, and then hopefully getting to a Final Four is something that we really want to do. And our players have that sense of tradition that they're playing for something bigger than themselves, that those people who played before them of keeping that kind of tradition upheld. I know that was a big motivation for people like Rachel Plocky and Brandy Valley, who, their idea was, let's not mess this up. And obviously they didn't. But I think every team's different. And what it takes to get there in each sport's very different. When you're in a lacrosse or a field hockey league, like our coaches are, there's one or two teams in the Final Four every year. So it's harder to get to that level, even in the conference. So it's very different, but I think the support Muhlenberg gives us allows us a chance. And I think as an athlete, you just want that chance.
Yeah. Anybody else? One other person? Because I do have one other question, but anybody? Somebody asked me, what's my favorite sport? And I said, who cares? But I'd like to, mine's basketball because I played it and covered it. I didn't play it at Lynn Tubman's level or Kevin's level. But so I wanted to ask each coach, and I have you all up on the screen, something about, not long answer, but what other sport you really liked and really follow? Because I suspect anybody's a coach really immerse themselves in sports. Nate, what was yours?
Sure, I played 3 sports growing up. I played baseball, basketball, and football. And I enjoyed basketball because all of the cool kids did it. And so I thought I was one of the cool kids now I will say this, I was not very good, but as you can imagine, I played like a football player. I hold the Jamestown High School record for fastest foul out in a game. I've had 5 fouls in under 2 minutes in the fourth quarter of some scrub time. So that was how I knew I could get my name in the papers if I fouled out, because I know I wasn't going to score ever. But basketball was my one. And I know there's a lot of guys on here and ladies as well who participate in our competitive noon hoops basketball. And so we look forward to having that back.
John, what was your other sport?
I wrestled. So I wrestled for Nazareth here in the Valley. In my senior year, we ranked number 2 in the country, so we were pretty good. I also kicked footballs during soccer season and played in the McDonald's All-Star game here. So
you were that's pretty good. You were pretty good. Amanda, what was your sport beside what you did?
I played some other sports, but I wasn't very good, so we won't talk about that. But I love to follow hockey. I wish that I would have played, but my parents, they wouldn't let me play growing up. But if I could go back, that would be the sport I'd play other than volleyball.
That's not too late. Todd, what do you got? What's yours?
Sure, I played basketball through high school. So I think watching college basketball is something that I really enjoy doing other than watching baseball.
I lost you there at the end, but Dave, what's your, beside soccer, what was your sport?
Yeah, so I played baseball and basketball as well as soccer growing up. And for as much as I love basketball, and I was very fortunate to be around some great basketball minds here in Lehigh Valley, like Hal Grossman, and when he would bring Raleigh Massimino in here for the Lehigh Valley Big Five, I got to pal around with those guys all the time, and met some wonderful basketball coaches through the years. But baseball will always be near and dear to my heart. I love baseball. My dad was a baseball player. My grandfather played at Lafayette back in the 1920s, and I could talk baseball all day.
Brad, what do you got?
Too many to talk about. I love golf. I love baseball. I'm in my 37th year as a college track and field coach, and this is the fourth school where I've worked, and everywhere I've ever worked, noontime basketball is a mainstay. And I'm 60 years old and I'm still playing noontime basketball and don't plan on stopping anytime soon.
All right. Well, I can remind you, when I was 60, I tore my Achilles playing noontime basketball. So
don't tell me that. Don't tell me that.
Be careful. Sarah, what's your other sport?
Well, like Nate, I played basketball and I averaged more fouls than points. So yeah, I do not have the temperament for that game, which is why you do not see me at noon. But I grew up a baseball fan. The two sports obviously, go hand in hand, but they're very different. And I grew up in a Dodger household. And so, listening to Vince Scully in the car on the way to and from softball practice, and baseball was always our big thing.
Bill, I guess it was basketball. We didn't get to it, but you coached basketball before you coached golf.
Yeah, 100%. Basketball is probably the number one sport in our household. I have to fight to turn it off to get golf on. It's just been in my family. It was my start in coaching. So I love it. It's really close second, right behind golf.
And Ron, baseball was as I mentioned in your thing, you played it at Easton High. I guess that would be your other sport.
Yeah, I love baseball. I grew up a Met fan, so you have to love baseball. But recently it's been European soccer. As you can see Sean Topping laughing because I stopped into his office to talk, Chelsea or Fulham or Bayern Munich all the time. And that's more of a product of our European trips, where all the bus drivers, all they do is watch soccer while they sit around and wait for you. So I have different favorite teams in different countries now based on who the bus driver followed on our trips to Europe.
Kevin, what else is a 6'10" kid? What other sport do you do?
I actually played football until I broke my wrist and it interfered with basketball. So that was the end of football. I also think that Coach Hackett might have more points in noontime hoops than Coach Tubman had in college. So I think he might be the all-time leading scorer on this call.
He's a player?
At noon hoops.
All right, I'll have to make it over there sometime. Jake, what do you got? Lacrosse, I'm guessing you were a football player, right? They go hand in hand.
Yeah, I played football. I also played ice hockey. Actually, ice hockey was my sport growing up. And, in high school, getting to play indoor lacrosse. That's basically once the ice melts, you start playing, indoor with some Native Americans. I grew up right next to a reservation. So my roommate in college was a guy by the name of Drew Bucktooth. The Bucktooth brothers were, some of the best players to come through Syracuse. So they invited me on some box teams. We went to Canada, played against other reservations up there. It started in the hockey rink and kind of ended in the hockey rink too. Playing box and kind of growing my game from that aspect. So definitely a 3-sport, 4-sport guy. Just love playing sports in general.
They need you at noontime hoops, knocking people around, obviously, because that's the subtext of what you're saying is you just like to knock people around a little bit, right? I'm guessing. I don't know whether Kristen's still on. You on, Kristen? Maybe not.
Yeah, sorry, I'm having camera issues.
Okay. What was your sport?
My other sport was
I played both field hockey and lacrosse in college. So definitely field hockey, and then I coached those both too at Muhlenberg for a while.
I guess they kind of go together, right? Probably a lot of women that are field hockey, lacrosse is a pretty good combo.
Yeah, we used to have a lot of crossovers, but not as much anymore with all the clubs. But yes, definitely.
Right, right. What do you got, Jason? I saw you reject a football and a basketball during the pre-video.
I only rejected a basketball because my dad tried to force me to play until I didn't grow anymore. So believe it or not, he's 6'3". But I played everything in high school, baseball, track, everything but basketball probably. I played football, actually played football for 2 years when I was here. And then I ended up fighting professionally when I was out of school. So I did a little bit of everything. I grew up in an athletic house. It was either, do your chores and get out the house and go play sports, or do your chores and get out the house and just stand there. So chose to play sports. I even played tennis for a little while. So a little bit of everything.
Did you say fight professionally?
Yeah, I fought professionally for 5 years.
You just tried to slip. We call that in journalism bearing the lead.
Yeah, well, I skipped. My mom would rather me skip over that part of my life.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we knew who not to mess around with. They need you in noontime hoops.
That's why I don't play.
And Megan, what else beside field hockey?
I also played field hockey and lacrosse throughout high school. But I wish I would have played ice hockey. Both of my brothers played ice hockey, and I wish I would have had that opportunity. But ice hockey wasn't that big when I was growing up for females. So.
No. Did I get to? Is that everybody? Lynn, are you keeping track?
I think that was everyone. And I think we've exceeded the hour time limit. I just want to thank everyone for participating. Jack, thank you for joining us this evening.
Pleasure.
It was very enjoyable, and we look forward to doing it again.
Okay, thanks everybody.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.